I am really glad you are here today, and we are really wanting to have a great conversation. We're going to walk through a paradigm, and it's a paradigm shift that I really think it's time for the church and us as individuals to really embrace. Now, before we get into this day, I have to share with you a principle I learned a long time ago. This principle quickly helps me discern if an idea is truly biblical or if it's really secular and maybe Christianized. Let me give you this principle so you will understand how we are going to arrive at a totally different idea in moments. When the world presents an idea, it almost always excludes God from the equation. Now, let me give you a few basic examples, and you can see this principle of excluding God pretty quickly. The world says that the world was created by some big bang. Now, seriously. Okay, this would be like an ink press blowing up and creating a dictionary. Okay, it's even way more complicated than that. That's not even a possibility. The creation that they present to our children is without God. Now, the biblical worldview of creation is found in the first verse of the Bible, which is my favorite verse. In the beginning, God. I could stop there, but it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This is a biblical idea, and you see God smack in the middle of the idea. It's God saying, I did this. I create. Okay, if something's created, it's probably created from God. So the world's view about how man came about is also excluding God. The world will teach our children that cells evolved into creatures that eventually became mammals and eventually became man. I mean, honestly, it takes a lot more faith to believe that, but that idea is exclusive of God. The biblical view of how humans came about is also found in Genesis 1. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. Now, again, in the biblical idea, God is smack in the middle of the idea. It's basically, I, God, am letting you know I did this. This was my idea. The heavens were my idea. The earth was my idea. And you were my idea. Now, I want to expose kind of a sacred cow that has, in my opinion, creeped into the church from the world and has brought with it all the consequences of the secular idea. This idea is called leadership. Now, I pause because you have to think about what I'm going to say. Now, before I take a step into this sacred place, let me first say I have no axe to grind with anyone or any ministry. And some of these systems and organizational ideas, they have some value. But first, let's look at this idea of a man leading a man, which is leadership. This idea biblically can be found when we see the word kingdom used for the first time in the Bible, which is also in Genesis. It's in Genesis 10. It's not used again for 10 chapters. Also, we need to pay attention to what kingdom was built. Listen to this verse in Genesis 10:8. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The first centers of his kingdom. Whose kingdom? His kingdom. Were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, Caleb, and Shinar. From that land, he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calath, and Resen. In the lineage chapter, and that's what chapter 10 is, it's interesting that this man is highlighted. Nimrod was a great war person. He was a great hunting person. Notice it doesn't say that God told him to build his empire. It's not like where God spoke to Noah and said, go do this. Nimrod took it upon himself. He built a kingdom, and every kingdom has a king. Here is the first great example of a man leading men in some hierarchy manner. Or I am better than you, I am greater than you, I have authority over you, ruling over another man. One man superior to another man, and really self-appointed. There's no scripture that supports that Nimrod was commissioned to do this. He just happened to be bigger, stronger, badder, more able to kill, and he got the job done. And the places where he built his kingdom, we're still struggling with those places in the world today. Leadership, at its core, as far as an idea, is a man leading a man. And this applies to women as well, okay? This may be a godly man, an ungodly man, a generous man, or a ruthless man who happens to be the leader. But how they lead is up to them. Since they are the leader, they get to make the decision. In the leadership model, we are in a kind of a tribal mentality. We're a tribe, and he or she is our chieftain. They're our leader. The leadership idea can bring order, for sure. It can bring systems, it can bring management. But it also, because at its core, it's not a biblical idea, and I'll get to that in just a bit. It's not biblical. Because why? It excludes God. Leadership can be done without him. And we have examples in the world, throughout world history, of good leaders, bad leaders, wicked leaders. And throughout the church, we have leaders who have various kinds of stories. But some of the downsides are the possible side effects, regardless if the leader is benevolent or cruel. There's several of these. There's automatically what we call an inner circle of elitists. These people are like a subcategory, and they have access to the leader, and the other ones don't. And that automatically sets up some kind of weird dynamic. Unknowingly, superiority creeps in. I'm in the inner circle, you're not. Okay, and this shows up in churches. I'm on the board, you're not. I'm a deacon, you're not, right? Competitiveness, vying for position of influence. Greed comes into a system, and there's a lot of church leaders who have fallen to greed, and power becomes part of how the dynamics of an organization is run. And people who are vying for power, are trying to manipulate the power, are trying to get the power. Control is part of a hierarchical system. Control of resources. I will control you with money, how much I pay you. What I think about you is going to be based on the resources that I want to give to you, the raise that you get, the position you move up into the system. Seduction, because people want to be around the person of power. Seduction comes into place because that's the way some people rise, okay? Also, the person believing that they're entitled can lead to seduction from the power to the person in the pew. Scripture warns about that, sleeping with silly women, because their position is created of superiority, and immorality can be rampant in a hierarchical system. These are just a few, and I could go on for another hour here. If you are in a church where these are the symptoms, your church has bought a secular idea of leadership. Now, I've spoken at these leadership conferences offering what I'm going to share with you next, and it can really be life-changing. And I'm not saying in any way that every church has to change. I'm thinking every church needs to evaluate the way they define and how they operate. And if it's operating under a secular idea, the chances of it having secular fruit are almost impossible to avoid. And that's what my heart's trying to share with you, that there is a biblical view that God is smack in the middle of, that really is his idea, and it's not this idea.